Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
It's pretty fucking amazing.
I saw Jackal play at a strip club at a fish camp near Walhalla or Seneca, somewhere up there.
Tiger Tails?
Maybe.
Strip club.
It was at a fish camp.
It's not at a fish camp.
It's called the Clam Strip.
Oh.
Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop, everybody. We're back on time as promised, and we've got a full house today. We have got joining us regular guest Joey Poole.
Hello.
Todd.
Howdy.
And the OG, the Podfather, Travisito.
Hello there.
I'll be your host, and today we're going to be talking about guilty pleasures.
And let me just say, you are so brave to have the audacity to broadcast about this topic. And I'm chomping at the bit here. I'm just going to go ahead and give you my top 5 right now. Debbie does Dallas. Debbie does Denver. Debbie does Detroit.
I don't think someone
Debbie
read the notes.
does Duluth. And 2 Girls, 1 Cup.
There you go. 2 Girls, 1 Cup definitely tops them all. So yeah, guilty pleasures. The movies that you like that are either poorly rated, socially unacceptable, forbidden, or whatever, but you like them despite that. So that's kind of what we're talking about today. We're going to dive right in because we've got a lot to cover. We told everyone to come in with 5 hot ones.
Yeah, I've got 3 hot ones and then 2 that are just sizzling.
Who wants to go first? Joey?
Well, before I give my first pick, I want to share a passage from Chuck Klosterman. This is from an essay called "Not Guilty," which is about guilty pleasures. He writes, "In and of itself, the phrase guilty pleasure seems like a reasonable way to describe certain activities. For example, it's pleasurable to snort cocaine in public restrooms, and it always makes you feel guilty as such. Lavatory cocaine fits perfectly into this category. Drinking more than 5 glasses of gin before work also qualifies as a guilty pleasure. So does having sex with people you barely know, having sex with people you actively hate. Those are all guilty pleasures in a technical sense. However, most people use this term to refer to things like why they like Joan of Arcadia, the music of Nelly, or Patrick Swayze's Roadhouse. This is troubling for 2 reasons.
Why would anybody feel guilty about liking
I know, right? And he finds it guilty for 2 reasons. One, because labeling things like a Patrick Swayze movie a guilty pleasure implies that people should feel bad for liking things they sincerely enjoy. And if those same people were not somehow coerced into watching Roadhouse every time it's on TBS, they'd probably be reading A Portrait of the Artist as a young man. So, in other words, I disavow the term guilty pleasure. And I will say ahead of time that I'm not one bit guilty for loving any of the movies that I've chosen.
And going forward, you're going to be using a lot of air quotes.
Yes. But my first one is not so much a movie as it is a genre. And I'm going to go ahead and get this one out of the way first because it's likely the one that's going to get me the most flack, especially in this sausage fest that I'm sitting in right now. And it's the Hallmark Christmas movie.
We did a whole episode about them.
Name a Hallmark Christmas movie. You can fill it in the blank. They're all pretty much interchangeable. Smoky Mountain Christmas is my go-to.
A Prince for Christmas.
Yeah,
I
they're
can't remember the name of any of them, but I can tell you the plot of all of them.
yeah, they're essentially just like uber wholesome rom-coms set at Christmas.
But like latently sexualized.
In a very, very latent way if you're watching the same ones I'm watching.
We see the chaste kiss and then the
yeah.
stuff that, dirty stuff happens off camera, I guess.
These movies are objectively bad, or at least they're objectively very formulaic, but I, for one, love them because while they're like Christmas cookies, while you're eating them, it's easy to pretend that the world is not a horrible, rotten, stinking, mean place and that we all live inside of a very pleasant snow globe. So I'll be watching some of those later this year.
Chabert. Yeah, there's a reason there's a whole string of these movies. People like them. It's a warm blanket. It's nice. You're right. There is no shame in that. But it's not high art. But hey, it doesn't have to be.
No.
Right?
And some actresses have revived, and actors have revived their careers
Like
and do
Lacey Chabert.
exclusive. Exactly. I'm thinking of
Winnie from
Wonder Years. Yeah,
Wonder Year.
that actress from Days of Our Lives is in a bunch of them. Allison, somebody. Anyway.
All right, Todd, take it.
Okay, so my first one, and all of mine are between the years 85 and 90 because I had so many on my
The actresses are?
the
It's very
Some like
progressive of you,
wrinkles.
Todd.
yes. The films here. So most of the movies that I settled on were ones that I first encountered in my childhood or teenage years.
Debbie Does Dallas. Debbie Does Detroit.
The Devil and Mrs. Jones. This first one actually was so I don't know if this is so much the case anymore, but back in the 80s and 90s, when local television stations, if it was a Saturday and a Sunday afternoon and there wasn't some sporting event going on, they just throw on some random movie. The Death Wish series of movies
Death
were
Wish. Charles Bronson?
Charles Bronson,
Nice.
yes. So my choice though is actually from 1985, Death Wish 3. And of course it stars Charles Bronson as Paul Kersey, who is a vigilante. In the first film, his wife and daughter are raped and killed, and he's in this kind of effete liberal type guy. And then that completely changes. He gets a gun and he goes out and starts killing bad guys.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole premise of all the movies, basically. And they get ever more ridiculous. Death Wish 3, he goes to visit a friend in New York, and it's an elderly man. And as soon as he gets off the bus, on his way to meet his friend is murdered by a thug who just kind of sneaks into his house. And basically the premise of the film, it turns out, not to belabor it too much, but it's basically Rambo meets the Warriors. So this gang of thugs has taken over this section of New York. They're basically running things. There's this thug named Fraker, who Charles Bronson runs into in jail because the police detective recognizes Bronson, or Charles Kersey, Paul Kersey, I'm sorry, who is under an assumed name because in the other Death Wish movies he's had to kind of go into hiding. People know who he is. And so this police detective who knows who he is throws him into jail and until he agrees to work for him and clean up the city on behalf of the police department, basically.
Chit-chat.
Yeah. So, these thugs, though, it's almost like, the Lost Boys or something. They've got weird mohawks. They've got paint on their faces. They're,
One of those multiracial 1980s movie gangs.
Yep, exactly. It's
a pretty accurate representation of New York, according to my parents.
Yep.
Is there a graffiti-covered subway car?
I don't remember a subway car specifically, but there's a lot of graffiti. I can tell you that. One interesting tidbit about this movie, as I was watching it, and I rewatched it for this, it said music by Jimmy Page, and I was like, surely that's not Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. It, in fact, is Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. However, in this particular movie, it's like cheesy synth 80s music, and I was like, that can't be Jimmy Page. So I went down a rabbit hole. Jimmy Page scored Death Wish 2, and then for Death Wish 3, he wasn't involved, but they just took his score from Death Wish 2 and synthed it.
Wow.
Right. So that sort of explained the kind of cheesy score there. The Death Wish 2 score is actually pretty good.
I bet there are hardcore heads who own both versions of that on vinyl.
Mm-hmm. Alex Winter actually is one of the thugs in this movie. Bill and Ted. Yep, exactly.
Speaking of Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm. Martin Balsam, who was in Psycho as the detective who gets killed, and they have the footage of him going down the stairs. He won an Oscar for a film called 1,000 Clowns. He's in this. Ed Lauder, who was in Cujo, King Kong, character actor that was in a bunch of stuff, is in this as well. So as far as, why do I find this guilty pleasure, the movie is just ridiculous on its face. One of the reviews that I found said, this is nothing more than cinematic masturbation.
Cinemasturbation.
So, yes, it's got 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. They actually stylized the movie Death Wish 3 with the actual number 3 instead of the Roman numeral, and the reason why was because they found a study that said that nearly half of Americans couldn't read Roman numerals, so they changed it to the actual number 3 instead.
I think you're still safe until you get to
Up
4.
to 3, sure. Yeah, right.
That was their logic, though. That's why 1 and 2, 2 had the Roman numerals, and then thereafter they just
And this
used
was
numbers.
1980 what?
5.
85.
Death Wish lost me with that. Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Have you seen Death Wish? I.
All right, Travisito, you're up.
All right. So the reason I'm picking this one is because it's a much maligned property in a vast universe of celebrated properties. I'm talking about Howard the Duck. Ooh. Howard the Duck from 1986. Rated PG, although they probably could have got slapped with a PG-13 for those duck boobs. Also, don't ducks lay eggs? Why would they have boobs?
We talked about this during our episode with Leah Thompson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. It's an hour and 51 minutes. Recently rewatched it. It's directed by Willard Huyck, Huyck. In this film, based on the comic character, a Marvel comic character, Howard the Duck is suddenly beamed from Duck World, a planet of intelligent ducks with arms and legs, to Earth, where he lands in Cleveland. There he saves Rocker Beverly, played by Leah Thompson, from thugs and forms a friendship with her. She introduces him to Phil, played by Tim Robbins, who works in a lab with scientist Dr. Jennings, played by Jeffrey Jones, who goes off the rails by the end of this movie. When the doctor attempts to return Howard to his world, Jennings instead transfers an evil spirit into his body. I loved this movie when it came out because I was exactly the right age, but then I never stopped loving this movie. Like, everybody's like, no, you can't, no. And so I was mentioning he's a maligned property, but he's kind of making a resurgence.
He's made cameos in the
Guardians of the Galaxy, and he looks a little bit different in each one, which is odd. But yeah, Howard the Duck is going to be awesome. My first guilty pleasure.
I just want to add, if there's anybody out there who can give us a canonical reason in the comics that there are boobs on these egg-laying ducks, please.
Junkin, where you at?
All right, well then, we've already mentioned mine in your quote. I'm picking Roadhouse as the guilty pleasure.
Roadhouse.
Because Roadhouse.
We got some overlap here.
Yeah, Roadhouse is a 41% Rotten Tomatoes.
Which is bullshit.
1989.
Dude, you got to rewatch this thing.
This thing's directed.
I can see why a critic would hate it.
They're doing a remake, like right now, right?
Yep. It's directed by Rowdy Harrington.
Roddy Harrington?
He should be. Starring, of course, Patrick Swayze, Sam Elliott, Kelly Lynch, and that blind guy.
Jeff Healey.
Jeff Healey, yes.
Oh, shit.
It's really a bad movie. I mean, you have to set aside your love for Patrick Swayze to see that it's a bad movie. It's over-the-top, goofy violence, a really thin plot.
The premise is so absurd. Like, I wish I were a fly on the wall when this was pitched to someone, because the premise is a millionaire flies from Missouri to New York to hire a well-known bouncer to run his shitty club, and it's like, why would a millionaire do that? Why wouldn't he just shut down the club if it was given him that much?
The stakes could not be any lower in this movie. Yet here we are, all riveted by what's going to happen next. Roadhouse. There you go. Joey, you're up again.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. For number 4, I am going with another one that I remember fondly from my youth. Mm-hmm. And I rewatched it again this week just to make sure that it was something that I actually wanted to show for. And fuck yes, I do. Beastmaster.
Beastmaster
is I'm just going to say it. It's a classic. It's people think of it as a knockoff of Conan.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this, and y'all at me, fight me.
Well, Conan
it's better
didn't have control over the animal world.
The first Beastmaster movie is better than any Conan film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Period.
And you got ferrets.
It's yeah. Mark Singer, who I know from, as many of you know, as Donovan from the V miniseries in the 80s. Rip Torn plays an evil wizard. Tanya Roberts, who is a Bond girl, and I believe was a View to a Kill. I believe is in the movie. It's a fantasy revenge epic.
We talked about this on the Sword and Sorcery episode with Dave. Our good friend Dave.
It's directed by Don Coscarelli, who did Phantasm and Bubba Hotep, and when I rewatched it again this week, it's a veritable visual feast. Yeah. I mean, it's a good movie.
It's all practical effects too.
So I don't feel guilty about any of these. I really don't feel guilty about this one.
I thought about adding this on my list.
Genre
but I knew
movie,
you'd hit it. Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah, great one. All right, Todd, you're up.
Next up on my list is a film that came out 3 weeks after Death Wish 3, Rocky 4, which does actually use the Roman numeral 4, so they have less contempt for their audience than did the Death Wish 3 people.
Now, which one is this? Is this
is the one where Ivan Drago. So he goes to Russia, and it is a perfect piece of Cold War propaganda, which is where the guilty part comes in, because it's shameless and it's flag waving. One quote that I came across said, Rocky 4 still stands not as a highlight of the series, certainly not that, but as a quintessential artifact of mid-'80s studio filmmaking, soulless, flag-waving, soundtrack blasting product with a capital P. Speaking of the soundtrack, one of the best of all time as far as I'm concerned. Survivors, Burning Heart, Living in America, Hearts on Fire, No Easy Way Out. And here's one of my favorite little tidbits about this movie. It's from that MTV era, right? 91 minutes long, 29 minutes of the movie, so almost one-third, are montage sequences.
Yes.
There are 8 totaling 29 minutes. And so, definitely pure 80s, trying to, I'm sure, get off on the MTV popularity of the time.
The lesson I learned from this movie is working out with lumber is greater than high-tech science.
Yep.
And anabolic steroids.
Yep. Oh, yeah. You've got to work out in the woods.
Absolutely. And so Stallone directed this himself. It was a huge box office success. $300.4 million it made.
Damn.
So it was a huge. I think that might have been the most successful Rocky movie, I believe. And one little thing though that's interesting about the movie though, the actor Tony Burton, who plays who trains Rocky, and he was originally the trainer of Apollo Creed in the previous movie.
Okay.
Of course, Apollo gets killed in this movie by the Russian,
Spoilers.
which is why Rocky comes out of retirement. But anyway, there's a scene where Tony gives Rocky a pep talk when he's at this little retreat in the woods or whatever. And Stallone says, "Thanks, Tony." He calls him by his real name, Tony.
Oh, no shit.
And they left it in the movie.
Wow.
Fuck it.
Yeah, they just left it in.
It strikes me that this is kind of the quintessential sequel too, in that it took what was originally a very gritty, working class sports drama series, which had slowly been kind of working toward its apotheosis into ridiculous blockbuster, and then this one was just the absolute apotheosis.
Excess. And it's definitely not working class anymore. He gives Paulie, his brother-in-law, a talking robot.
Yes.
For his birthday.
The robot's amazing.
Yeah.
Didn't his son play his actual son in this?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, his actual son, who I believe came back for Rocky 5 as well, which may be one of the worst movies of all time. But
all right, Travis.
Oh, and I'm next. Debbie does Duluth? No. So I'm going with Tremors. Tremors from 1990.
Awesome.
Love this movie. Probably watched it 1,000 times as a kid on VHS. We got a PG-13 rating only because they say mother humpers instead of motherfuckers. It is a horror sci-fi directed by Ron Underwood. You've got these 2 repairmen, these handymen out in Perfection, which I think they're supposed to be in, is it Colorado? They're in a specific state, but they keep mentioning Bixby, which is in Wyoming, which does not border the state that they're supposed to be in. They're always talking about going to Bixby. Anyway, so it's Val and Earl, played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward.
Yes.
And they're tired of their dull lives in the small town of Perfection. Nevada. Sorry, it's Nevada. But just as the two try to skip town, they happen upon a series of mysterious deaths and a concerned seismologist, played by Finn Carter. We didn't really see much of her after this. I would have liked her to have a more prominent career. Studying unnatural readings below the ground. With the help of an eccentric couple, Reba McEntire and Michael Gross,
Reba.
the group fights for survival against giant worm-like monsters hungry for human flesh. The movie is almost perfection.
Well, my question about this one is: does this qualify as a guilty pleasure? What is the consensus about Tremors? Because I thought that it was sort of a beloved.
It's definitely gained a cult following, and that's what Michelle said when I told her it was on my list. She's like, "No, everybody loves Tremors," but I think that it's campy enough and takes itself seriously enough to qualify. Now, I cannot say the same for any of the sequels. Those are just guilty. There's no pleasure involved.
All right. My next is from 1981. That's a 64% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is insanely high just because of how...
64?
Yeah. It's Clash of the Titans.
Oh, the original one with the stop-motion animation?
Yeah. Ray Harryhausen.
Ray Harryhausen, yes.
He was
That was 81?
81.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was earlier.
Directed by Desmond Davis, starring Harry Hamlin, Laurence Olivier, which is kind of funny, Judy Balker, Burgess Meredith, Maggie Smith is in this movie.
Dame
What?
Maggie Smith?
Are you serious?
And Ursula Andress is in this.
Nice.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bond girls.
So yeah, this was sword and sandals, sword and sorcery. A lot of digging into Greek mythology to cobble together a pretty flimsy storyline about
Sword and shish kebab?
Yeah. Perseus is trying to get married to the hot chick, and the evil Calibus is showing up at night, stealing her soul every night. I guess, I don't know, something to do with Medusa, something to do with release the Kraken.
Yeah,
and it's really not good, and I was surprised when I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes on it because I loved it as a kid. I was in 3rd grade when it came out, and I thought it was the coolest shit in the world, and I was obsessed with Greek mythology at that point. And I think, what was the Dan Riordan books that the teens were reading that had a lot of Greek mythology in it? I remember my goddaughter talking about it.
Percy Jackson.
Yeah,
Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Yeah, she was talking about all of that, and I was like, wait a minute, I remember all of this mythology because I watched Clash of the Titans.
Yes.
Fuck yeah.
This
We
is the
watched it in
first
school.
movie. This is the first movie that I remember seeing on the big screen at the drive-in in
That's
Minetta. This is the very first movie I ever remember my parents took me to see. So it holds a special place in my heart too. Now I haven't seen it recently, so
Yeah,
I think it's considered a groundbreaking film in terms of the special effects and the
not really,
stop
because
motion.
Ray was doing the stuff that he had always been doing with the Sinbad movies. And this was in 81, so it was kind of like long in the tooth by the time it came out.
Honestly, I was thinking of Sinbad. Yeah.
Because a lot of Ray Harryhausen's classics were 50s, 60s,
Right,
right?
exactly.
okay.
So
that's why I was a little
So this
surprised
is
that
Ray
it came
kind of
out then.
trotting out all of his.
it was retro
his
at the
old
time, I
tricks.
guess.
Yeah. So I love it, of course, because I just thought it was beautifully done, and I have high respect for him and his abilities. But as a movie, I just don't think it's that great. Sir Laurence Olivier was very sleepy as Zeus, just collecting that paycheck.
Yeah.
It's like these great actors at the end of their career just kind of getting a few more in under the wire. That's the way that movie felt for me, for him. Anyway.
I just this morning I had a craving for Saturday morning cartoons, so I searched Popeye, and there's an episode. It's Popeye the Sailor Man meets Sinbad the Sailor.
Oh.
But they just basically used the Bluto archetype for Sinbad.
There you have it. I thought about adding the Popeye movie.
That was the next thing I watched.
I watched that a lot as a kid, and
Robert Altman.
Even as a kid, I realized it was shitty.
Yeah. Well, Shelley Duvall makes anything shitty.
Oh, come on, man! You hate on her, and she was the perfect pick for that character too.
She was the only person who could have played.
Yeah,
What about Shelley Long? Come on.
All right, Joey.
I am going to break the seal on Ernest.
Oh,
I feel like we have some other Ernest movies coming
What do you mean,
down
Vern?
the pipe. I'm going to break the seal on this one because it was the very first appearance in a feature-length film, anyway,
Okay.
of the Ernest P. Worrell character. This is a movie that I wasn't sure actually existed, and I thought that it might be a figment of my imagination until I looked it up earlier this week and watched it. And this was kind of like my first moment as like a budding film snob, because I remember getting this movie from the VHS Center in Peoria, South Carolina, and my cousins and people who around my age didn't get it. They didn't really like it, and I was like, y'all just don't understand this.
Right.
You just don't understand. It's over your heads. This is a movie.
This Ernest movie is over your head.
I watched it. It's called Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Moon Gloom Beam.
I
And
know,
it
never even
is
heard of this.
Fucking nuts,
That's
y'all.
the one with the
Yes.
gloved hand on top of the
He
head.
plays a
Yes.
like a Flash Gordon-esque galactic villain who has a hand on top of his head.
Jim Varney is playing
Yeah.
this
Jim
character?
Varney plays it, and which we learn later in the movie, and this went over my head as a kid, that the reason that he has a hand on top of his head is because he's the result of a botched abortion.
Oh,
Yikes.
God.
Which makes it a little bit darker than your normal Ernest fare, right?
Uh-huh.
This was actually the first appearance of Ernest. He appears twice in like a vignette before the credits, and he appears again at the end in a scene which I can't talk too much about without giving spoilers.
God, I want to see this movie.
But it's Jim Varney, who's obviously the most famous character was Ernest, plays 5 different characters in here.
What?
It seems
he pulls
like
a clumps?
yes. It seems like a kind of like a vehicle for him to show off all these characters, because there's a changing coffin that Dr. Otto von Schnick, that's how he stylizes his name. There's a changing coffin that he goes into to morph into these different characters to thwart the the good guys, as it were. It lands somewhere south of a sci-fi spoof, but y'all, it's bonkers.
It sounds like
this,
an acid trip.
well, it's like a
Combined with a fever
DIY.
dream.
It's kind of like a DIY down-home trauma release.
Okay.
Is what it sort of feels like, and
Yes.
I cannot do it justice with just how weird it is. And it's got a really low rating. No one ever talks about it, but it might be the best Jim Varney film.
Like, in all seriousness, where is it available? Like, what?
I watched it on, I think, Roku TV.
Okay.
Or one of the those free
Gotcha.
streaming apps.
Yeah.
So,
You have to sit through
Dr.
some ads,
Otto
but you
and
get
the
all
Riddle
bonkers
of the
stuff, too.
Moon Gloom Beam.
I bet you get all the shittiest ads with that one too.
It's just Lottaburger.
All right, Todd, what's up?
Well, so my next movie was actually going to be Roadhouse. So rather than talk about that again, I'm going to add an addendum to Joey's with
Okay.
we're going to turn this into a Jim Varney episode.
Yes.
But and my failed efforts to find a copy of Ernest Goes to Camp to watch, which I considered for my list. And so I couldn't understand why I couldn't find this movie, because every other Ernest movie, including Ernest Goes to Africa, which it is on lists of like the most racist films of all time. I was like, why
Seems
can't
like
I
if
find
there was
Ernest
one
Goes to
you wouldn't
Camp?
be able to find, it would be Ernest Goes to Africa.
Exactly. Yeah, right. Ernest Goes to Camp. So I went down a Reddit rabbit hole, and I found out why it is no longer available. So basically the premise of the movie is that Ernest is like a camp counselor, and he gets involved with this Indian tribe, and there's this evil capitalist who's trying to steal their land, so he helps them out. So the actor,
real Scooby-Doo situation.
the actor who plays the Indian is a guy named Iron Eyes Cody, who's most famous as the Crying Indian.
The guy who was the one single
The
tier?
single tier guy.
Wow.
Yep. And so, apparently, Iron Eyes Cody was a fraud.
Yeah.
It turned out, and his I think it was his sister, came out in around 1996 and said he's not actually a Native American, he's Italian. And
Stolen
Stop
valor.
it. Stop it.
yes,
It's true.
yep,
He was the original Rachel Dolezal.
yep.
Wow.
So it gets a little bit more. So he denied it at the time, and then I think after he died, they actually found documentation to prove that both his parents were Sicilian. So he just created a whole career playing these Native American characters, oftentimes at the behest of his friend Walt Disney. So this is Walt Disney
this is
owns the
nice.
rights to that film, and apparently in order to protect the image of Walt Disney and the fact that he was, even though he was long dead when this came out, the company decided we're just going to put this film away because
shelved it.
Yeah, because
doesn't
Iron
make
Eyes
Walt
Cody
look good.
pulled a fast one on Walt. So they'll let
They
Ernest
robbed the world of Ernest Goes to Camp because of one man's mistake.
right.
That's-
So there was nothing particularly
I
offensive
don't
about
think it was
the
a mistake. I'm pretty sure he did it on purpose.
yeah, but there was nothing particularly offensive about the film itself. It was just this one, Iron Eyes Cody.
Ernest Goes to
Todd,
Todd.
do the song.
What?
Gee, I'm glad it's raining.
All right, we have to pay royalties if we sing any more than that. Do you know the song?
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
From Ernest Goes to Camp.
It's
I was
actually a
having
pretty
stroke
good
for a
song.
second.
Anybody who's listening to us right now, if you ever run into Todd and he's out having a few adult beverages, ask him to sing the song from Ernest Goes to Camp.
You've never heard the. Have you seen the movie?
Ernest Goes to Camp? Yes.
I will contend this is actually a pretty good song.
It's a good song. It really is.
Gee, I'm glad it's raining. There's always something to be thankful for. I'm awfully glad it's raining,
What a pathos.
'cause no one sees your teardrops when it pours.
So speaking of the teardrop, the one teardrop, maybe he was talking about Iron Eyes Cody.
Maybe.
My favorite line we didn't get to: all they wanted was a hero, all I needed was a friend. Anyway.
That's amazing.
I love that you know way more lyrics than I do. That's really funny.
Yeah, I watched it quite a bit as a kid. So
I saw it a few times. Travis.
Over to me, number 3. I've got Earth Girls Are Easy. Earth Girls Are Easy. And I rewatched this today, so it is freshly tattooed on my brain matter. Of course, we've got a trio of aliens, one red, one yellow, one blue, who crash land in Hollywood and find a remarkably fit Gina Davis, who kind of tries to protect them and show them around. They're played by Jeff Goldblum, Jim Carrey, and Damon Wayans. Fucking amazing. Also, Michael McKean shows up as like a Surfer Spicoli like character, and I was like, "What?"
That seems like really weird casting.
Yeah, no, it's also like unbelievably a musical. So there's like extended musical numbers throughout the film. Oh, and one last thing about it: the unfaithful fiance is played by one Charles Rocket from Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
Remember,
wow.
he was supposed to be the new It guy, a combination of Bill Murray and Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And he ended up getting fired with the restructuring there.
Yep.
That was during Lauren's hiatus.
Right.
Charles Rocket eventually committed suicide by slitting his own throat.
That takes commitment.
For real, right?
Yeah. All right, last one before we take an intermission. For me, it's going to be a film that we spent an entire episode recasting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about 1981's Cannonball Run.
Cannonball Run!
It's a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's bullshit. That's fucking
Yeah,
robbery.
I agree.
It completely set the stage for the ensemble cast.
Oh my
race,
God, yeah.
Race for Your Life movie.
I will go out on a limb and say we would not have the Fast and the Furious franchise without Cannonball Run.
We wouldn't have what's the reality show?
The Great Race.
The Amazing Race.
Amazing Race.
We wouldn't have The Amazing Race if it wasn't for Cannonball Run.
Directed by Hal Needham, starring a veritable potpourri of B and D and C list actors.
Well, you can't just say Hal Needham without explaining who he is.
Hal
He was
Needham did,
Burt Reynolds' stuntman.
yeah, and he directed a lot of these wackadoodle type movies that Burt was in. Of course, starring Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Farrah Fawcett, Roger Moore, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Jack Elam, Jackie Chan, Adrian Barbeau, Bert Convey, Terry Bradshaw was there.
Somehow.
I mean, it sounds like a really crazy coke-filled night in Hollywood.
Can you imagine?
It's crazy.
It blows my. I mean, I haven't seen this film since I was much younger, but it blows my mind that it's so reviled. It was like 29%. I would have sworn that it was like a beloved classic of '80s populist '80s.
Why you can't always
cinema.
trust Rotten Tomatoes?
You can't. It is a guilty pleasure for me. I saw it in the theater as a kid, and I've loved it ever since. Every time it's on, it's one of those movies. It doesn't matter where it is in the film. I'll sit there and watch it and wait for Captain Chaos. And
TBS thanks you.
I know, right? Every time. So, yeah, that's going to be my pick. We're about half an hour in, so I figured it's a good time we take a intermission. But before we go, I think it's time that we say,
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some guilty pleasure.
well, yeah,
A beer.
that's my guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
And we're back.
Are you ready?
Thank you for sticking with us during intermission.
I peed in the yard.
Travis and I peed in the yard.
My pee is a fluorescent yellow for B vitamin consumption.
We crossed the streams.
No, well, yeah, they got intertwined.
Did you ever do that like in grade school? Did y'all have like the big pee trough, or did you have like
I had 9.
We
middle
had the
cousins
trough,
yes,
yeah.
of course.
yeah, like
And we would,
Sword
and you have to
fighting.
sword fight,
cross
yeah.
the streams, man? Hell yeah!
I hate it when my Schwartz get tangled.
Typically, when we come back from intermission, we do what? What do we like to do?
A beer check-in.
Yeah, who's got beers?
I have a Sycamore Mountain Candy, which is an IPA.
They're from Charlotte.
North Carolina.
Yep. And it is quite good.
We've been sipping on the Resident Culture Casual Continuum
Casual consent.
IPA, and it's quite yummy. And I've got another one I'll open up in just a second from our friends at New Anthem,
New Anthem in Wilmington.
where I was recently stomping around. All right, well, we're going to continue our fun of going down the list of
This
all of
episode all about Jackal.
Jackal. Wasn't their big hit like? Didn't they have like a chainsaw?
Something about a chainsaw.
Yeah, the
They played a
chainsaw
chainsaw
solo
on the
and the
guitar.
lumberjack song. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I knew that I remembered something from college, and it sure wasn't my education. All right, JoJo, what you got?
Well, this list would not have been complete without some B-movie horror, obviously. Again, I do not feel one bit guilty about any of these, but this is I'm going to nominate the entire series here, not just one film. It's the Puppet Master series.
Puppet Master.
There are,
Yes.
I think,
Speaking
like
of Metallica.
12 or 13 of these movies now, including the latest one called The Littlest Reich, which is
Actually
arguably
quite
the
good.
best in the series.
And it's like something with Nazis?
Well, there's Nazi mythology
Throughout the
intertwined
series.
throughout the series. They are Nazi in origin.
Nazi
and
puppets?
Not exactly.
I
They
did
were-
not see that coming.
the puppets themselves.
The puppet master Toulon was
Yeah.
a German, and the Nazis tried to get him to
Exactly.
use his puppets for evil purposes, but he would not go along.
Genocide and
So
such.
Todd and I, because we are lucky enough to have every Friday off, because we don't really work for a living. We've been doing a coffee movie series in the mornings on Friday morning and watching the Puppet Master series. I think we're through about 5 of them now, plus The Littlest Reich, which we accidentally watched at the beginning of this.
Can you be part of the club if you don't like coffee?
Yes, by all means.
Are you wearing
yes.
spa robes when you do this?
Not necessarily,
Hot
although
towels?
that could be a
That's a good idea, actually.
But I think I've watched about 5 of these now. They are exactly what you think. They're puppets killing people. Sometimes though, like Tom and Jerry, sometimes the puppets are evil. Sometimes they're good. There's a whole Nazi backstory. The last one that we watched, number 4 or 5, whichever, goes even further into the backstory. There's the Nazis, or the Toulon and the Nazis were trying to take this technology. Is the puppets are animated via some sort of magic from
It's like
ancient
Reanimator,
Egypt.
kind of the way that they reanimate them. There's
And
some sort of elixir.
it's a straight-to-video stalwart. It really was one of those things that kind of, the straight-to-video market put out a lot of stuff like this.
Yeah.
I'll say that Puppet Master, the whole series, is probably the creme de la creme of the straight-to-video horror market. And good movies. Delivers
times.
exactly what you think they will.
Okay. Todd, what have you got next?
So this movie is a rare 0% on the tomato meter. A critic said about it, it's misguided, it's not funny, and in its lame efforts to be irreverent and hip, it turns out to be just plain mean. And yet, it was a blockbuster that made $72 million at the box office and spawned a sequel, Problem Child, 1990.
Oh, God.
Starring John Ritter.
Yeah.
And this is another one where I would love to have been a fly on the wall when this was pitched. So, we're going to make a kids movie about a kid who's a psychopath, and his hero is a serial killer.
Yes.
The serial killer is...
I have to mention something about Problem Child. The cover art. You can picture it in your head, right? The kid is holding up the mom and dad by their ankles, and
Right.
all of the pictures, which are for some reason on the outside of the house, are askew.
Right.
Cut to a movie called Parenthood with Steve Martin, where he's standing in front of the house holding 2 kids by their ankles, and all of the pictures behind him are not askew.
Interesting.
I've been obsessed with it for years.
Very, very notable art, for sure. But
You guys know way more about
well,
this
of course,
movie.
I was 9 years old when this came out, so of course I was the audience for it. But I would maintain it does have some watchability that remains. Another thing that's interesting about this movie is that pretty much all the characters are completely unlikable, except for John
The
Ritter.
Bowtie Killer.
Yeah. Who's played by Kramer,
Yes.
Michael Richards. And the child actor, it's a kid named, Michael Oliver.
I'm pretty sure his name was Problem Child.
Yeah. Awful performance.
Yeah, he's bad. He's real bad.
I had to see this as a child when
Under duress?
Yes. When we would go on family vacation, my parents would agree to let me and my sister go see a movie by ourselves, but we had to come to a consensus on what we were going to see.
This sounds like hell.
And I remember very clearly
Older or younger sister?
my younger sister.
Oh, God,
You
me
were born
too.
in 77, weren't you?
81.
81.
So I was,
okay.
Yeah, so-
All right. So my sister was born in 77, and she wanted to see Problem Child. I wanted to see Arachnophobia.
Man, Arachnophobia is the superior film.
Right. So
Yes,
I had
100%.
I had to be the big brother in the scenario and settle and go see this fucking movie. It's not a pleasure for me.
But
I'm sorry.
next time it was your pick, right?
No.
That's not how shit like that works.
doesn't
When
work
you
that
have a
way.
younger sister, no.
Yeah.
I have a younger sister.
I rewatched it last night, enjoyed it. It's definitely not a good movie. However, there is something about the absurdness about how, this was a kid's movie, and yet it actually was popular.
I'm curious about that, like your perspective as a parent.
Yeah. It's very weird. The kid is, pretty much a shit.
Devious.
Devious, a psychopath, essentially.
Did you say he's malevolent?
Yeah, I think so.
And then they kind of, at the end of the movie, they try to quickly wrap it up and make it out, he was just a psychopath because he kept being given away. But if you go back to the beginning of the movie, he kept being given away for good reason. He was
because he's a shithead.
It was a shithead.
Bad kid.
But anyway.
Oh, wow. All right, Travis.
Over to me. All right, so full disclosure, I walked into this meeting thinking that we were talking about 3 movies, and then found out it's 5, and I just scribbled down 2 more. So I'm going to be a little bit loose in the goose with this one. Has anybody ever seen Rustler's Rhapsody?
No.
Rustler's Rhapsody. It's a Western comedy starring Tom Berenger. Where he plays Rex O'Hurlihan, the singing cowboy.
No.
And he befriends the town drunk and has to negotiate a land dispute between the railroad men and the sheep herders. One of the villains is named Black Bart, and he's played by the butler from Downton Abbey. John Wayne's son is in this. as a confirmed heterosexual. It's fucking awesome. They eat hallucinogenic roots and the horses start singing. Watch this.
When did this
movie.
come out?
1986, 87.
I feel like there's
that.
an alternate universe where this is a beloved cult classic, and in this universe, I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, I love this movie so hard. Give me a shot and hold the hair.
Wow.
Because they automatically put hair in your whiskey. Because that's just the norm.
Sure.
Yeah, it's so good, you guys.
Tom Berenger.
Oh, fucking
Wow.
the train baron or the cattle baron is played by Andy Griffith.
Oh, my.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
1985. I was
85.
close.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. There you go. All right. My next, I told you that I don't have shame, so I don't feel bad about watching any films that I like. I don't feel guilty. But this one is one that, through the lens of time, does not have the same acceptance. I went with 1985's Weird Science.
Oh,
that's a good movie.
56% on Rotten Tomatoes. I watched this film pretty much every day while I was in
Masturbating.
7th or 8th grade. Yeah, during the summertime.
Yeah.
What was that actress's Kelly LeBrock?
Kelly
right?
LeBrock.
LeBrock.
Anthony Michael Hall, Ian Mitchell Smith.
Doesn't Robert Downey Jr. show
Robert
up?
Downey
love this
Jr.
bitch, man.
Robert Downey Jr.'s in it. Bill Paxton. The great Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes.
And Bill
shows up.
Paxton
right,
is
right.
the older brother, right?
Yeah. He turns into a big
jock.
big shit, big pile of shit. He's a military nut, is
Yeah.
what he was. But obviously, this does not fare well over time because there's a issue of consent involved in the film.
Right.
Beyond,
That pops up
I mean, beyond the fact that they construct a woman based on male adolescent fantasies. Okay,
saying that
yes,
doesn't count.
that's cringy. But beyond that, I would counter that the film actually is a commentary on those adolescent male fantasies. She has a little bit more autonomy than you've
I
given
agree.
her credit for.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I've always said that
She's smarter than them.
I've always said that Kelly LeBrock has control of the situation at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, she was created, but however, she does pull the strings for the
Now
whole
let's talk
movie.
about Revenge of the Nerds.
Well, that was going to be my other thing I was going to say is that this kind of pairs with Revenge of the Nerds in that movie does not fare well either because you're talking about
Andrew
tricking into sex.
commented on that one way back in the early days of this podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
But everything that we just said about Weird Science is true. But that scene in the bar where he's talking to the older
Anthony
blues
Michael Hall,
man,
yeah.
that shit is fucking comic gold.
In the Family Jewels. Yeah, that's some of the best comedy.
Yeah,
man.
that's great.
Loved it. All right, this is our last round.
Correct.
All right, you better bring it.
Okay. So when I started doing the research for this episode well ahead of time because I
Joey's got his
wanted
preaching
to.
hands
Hang on, before Joey gets on a roll, I got to open a new one. This is cherry colored funk, by the way.
What?
Cherry colored funk.
I like that.
Go ahead, Joey.
So as I said, I did the research for this episode well ahead of time, and because I genuinely wanted to revisit many of the movies that I've talked about today.
Right.
And I did revisit most of them. I had no idea what my fifth and final pick was going to be until last night. It came to me magically.
I didn't know until 30 minutes ago.
My wife pulled out this random movie last night. Hey, I want to see this. And I'd never heard of it before. Have you guys, and this I extend our listeners at home, have y'all heard of a movie called Tiptoes?
Tiptoes.
No. I'm not familiar with that.
Y'all,
Never have.
this shit is nuts. Okay? 2004, Matthew McConaughey plays a normal-sized man who comes from a family of dwarves, little people.
I've heard of this.
He's dating Kate Beckinsale, who's the female Keanu Reeves, in that she's Kate Beckinsale in everything that she's ever in.
Sean really wants to correct your pronunciation.
Beckinsale. But okay.
Sorry. He doesn't tell her that he comes from a family of little people until she gets pregnant, and drama ensues.
Oh, my.
Y'all, Gary Oldman Gary fucking Oldman.
Gary Coleman
plays a little person in this movie.
Yes,
walking around on his knees,
Like Dorf on golf.
Oh no!
I'm serious. Like, how is this not a thing? Right? Okay. Listen, I'm not here to weigh in on that part of it. Obviously, Gary Oldman playing a little person in a cast full of actual little people. They gave a lot of little people actors. Peter Dinklage is in the movie.
Actor Gary Oldman.
I'm not here to comment on that. Beyond all of that,
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
beyond all of that baggage, beyond that, I'll let other more qualified people comment on that part of it. This movie is a train wreck of epic.
Where's
epic
the
proportions.
pleasure come in?
It's fascinating.
Okay. That it exists.
Apparently there was a director's cut, 150 minutes long. That was what director Matthew Bright intended. The producers cut it down to 90 minutes. And he jumped on stage at Sundance when it premiered at Sundance and lambasted the producers, saying that they had,
Let me guess. He got up and he said, "This film is short," and everyone goes, "I know."
And they pulled him off stage. Peter Dinklage said that he signed on for a movie that was going to be, everything that he thought it was going to be, but they turned it into a rom-com with dwarves. It is. I'm going to give you a line of dialogue from the movie.
Yeah, please.
So there's a point in the film after she finds out accidentally. Oh, I forgot to mention that David Alan Grier has sex with a little person porn star in this movie.
Perfect.
Wow. Kate Beckinsale's character. So, have you ever been sexually intimate with a little person, a midget? She's still calling them midgets at this point.
Okay.
Before she
Are they
gets woke
dwarves
to
or
it.
midgets?
They make a big deal of this. The correct nomenclature is little people are dwarves. Midgets is offensive. But
there is a difference.
There is a difference between a little person and a dwarf, yes.
But she asked him if he's ever been sexually intimate. He says, not really. Just kid stuff.
What the fuck?
She says, delivers this line with a straight face. You mean you had a circle jerk with a bunch of midgets? I'd love to see that.
Okay,
That's the kind of
weird-
movie
that's a
that we're
weird
talking
take
about.
That she got from that.
Yeah.
I could see a world in which just kid stuff means just like over the clothes stuff. But it really comes across as pedophilia.
Yeah,
But
and-
then her reply has nothing to do with kid stuff. It's a circle jerk with dwarves.
Again, I don't want this. I don't want this to come across as offensive to little people.
Right.
That's not where I'm going with this movie. Beyond all that, it is a train wreck of just epic.
Some of my best friends are midgies.
Epic proportions, and you have to see it to understand how fascinatingly weird and bad this movie is.
All right. So for my last one, and this actually came out in December of 1990, shortly after A Problem Child, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Kindergarten Cop.
Oh!
Directed by Ivan Reitman of
Yep.
Ghostbusters, Stripes. Another one was Schwarzenegger Twins. It's got 53% on Rotten Tomatoes, which kind of surprised me, so it's not reviled by critics, although one critic did say something that I actually thought summarized why it's pretty awesome. A mismatch of violence, psychodrama, and lukewarm kiddie comedy. And I actually thought that that combination is what made the film work, because it's a kids movie.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of it, there's this we see a drug dealer murder someone.
Is it set in Seattle? Somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, I think.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I can't remember the city, but probably because there was a lot of rain in the movie. But in any case, John Kimball, played by Schwarzenegger, is this roughhouse cop. And so he's trying to nail to the wall this guy, Crisp, played by a character actor named Richard Tyson, who I don't know if he popped up in anything after this, or significant at least. So Kimball and his partner, played by Pamela Reed, go to this town. It's called Astoria, so wherever that is.
Astoria's in Oregon. That's where the
there you
Goonies
go.
is set.
Perfect. So, the premise is that Phoebe, who's the detective, is supposed to. She has some teaching experience, so she's supposed to go and teach in this kindergarten class that they think might have Crisp's estranged son, because Crisp's wife ran away with the son to get away from him because he's a murderous drug dealer.
It's like a witness protection situation, isn't
Essentially, yeah. But she gets incredibly sick and can't do it. And so, of course, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kimball, has to go in and teach this kindergarten class with no credentials, which
he
leads
has to experience their naivete about boys have a penis and girls have a vagina.
a famous line, boys have it.
Also, it's not a tumor.
It's not a tumor. Yep, that's a good one. There's one hilarious kid that's obsessed with death, and I also like it too. At the end of his first day, he falls on the bed, and there's a shot with his face smashed up, and he goes, "They're horrible." But yeah, so I saw this movie when it originally came out, but over the years I've found it still eminently watchable, even though it is kind of weird.
How have they not remade this?
Yeah.
How has Kindergarten Cop not been remade with The Rock?
Yeah, but it's really dark for a kids movie.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason it works, and I'm a fan. It made over $200 million at the box office, so it was a box office hit. But the reason why I consider it the guilty pleasure is a few years ago, me and my former girlfriend and a couple of friends were doing a Schwarzenegger movie marathon. My pick for that was Kindergarten Cop, and one of the people there, who I didn't know, a mutual friend brought them over, got actually pissed off. I mean, they were pissed off that they were going to have to watch Kindergarten Cop because they wanted traditional Schwarzenegger.
Out of all,
they were hoping for a last action hero.
I was going to say, for all the grand Schwarzenegger movies.
Well, I think they wanted action star Schwarzenegger.
Tough
And not,
Yeah.
I agree. That was my point.
Sounds
But
like
in any
entitlement
case,
to me.
I was there too. This was actually at my house,
I see you
and the one person who objected was a woman, which I thought was funny because she was like you pussies, you're watching fucking Kindergarten Cop. She wanted Raw Deal or Commando or something. Yeah.
Commando's great.
Red Heat.
True lies, motherfucker.
Over to me.
Get to the chop shopper.
Go ahead and get to the chop shop. I don't like it in here. It's scary. All right, so I've got one that I wrote down, and I'm going to, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do a double feature. This is Alan Quatermain and the Lost City of Gold combined with King Solomon's Mine.
Yes.
2 movies starring Richard Chamberlain as Alan Quatermain, which is dismissed regularly as a Indiana Jones knockoff.
But he came
However,
first.
it's based on novels that came way before the indie universe. Sharon Stone, James Earl Jones, just quality action adventure comedy.
I agree. We've talked about it on the show. It's good stuff, and I don't understand why it never really took traction. I think Alan Quatermain is a strange name for modern audiences to digest. It does not have the same appeal as Indiana Jones.
I briefly considered putting Indiana Jones in the Crystal Skull
I hate
as
that.
one of mine, but I thought, that's why I didn't, because I thought that I might not be invited back.
I think the new one is going to
I hope
be
it's better.
than that, and they're trying to kind of right the ship before he retires.
I was very happy to hear that they were doing this because I didn't want them to leave it off. I don't even count the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
The last one is the
Is
last
it that bad, though?
It's real
really?
bad.
They have like badly computerized CGI ants. Like
The three of us saw that in the theaters at the Julia. Do you guys remember that?
I remember.
Todd and Travis and I
do
saw that
remember
in
now.
the theaters at the Julia,
That's
and
amazing.
I remember thinking that it wasn't as bad. I remember thinking that it wasn't as
What about
bad
the
as
part
y'all
where
seem to
they're-
think it was.
Where they're swinging from the vines with the monkeys.
Yeah, God.
Yeah.
And
Bad
horrible
stuff. And,
CGI.
Shia LaBeouf. Can we just...
Yep. It seems like they were going to try to set up the series to take off with
Right.
LaBeouf,
They
right?
wanted to,
Yeah.
but
Yep, the movie.
And
was
then
too bad.
he turned out to be Shia LaBeouf.
Didn't take.
audiences weren't having that. All right. My last pick is from 1987. It has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is right down the middle. It's directed by Tom Mankiewicz. He was the writer of Superman the movie.
The founder of the Mankiewicz Foundation.
He wrote Lady Hawk. He
Ooh.
wrote
Sword and Sorcery.
He wrote Live and Let Die. The
Paul McCartney song?
The movie stars Tom Hanks, Dan Aykroyd, Christopher Plummer, Jack O'Halloran, and Dabney Coleman. I'm talking about Dragnet.
Dragnet. Yes.
I fucking loved this movie when I was in high school. MTV, for some reason, was on the hype train for this film. They had a very bad rap.
Well,
A
it's
rap
weird.
video with Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. It's a City of Crime.
Yeah.
They were rapping.
They rapped.
Wow.
As in character.
I have no idea about this movie.
In character.
So it's
yeah.
a film adaptation of the TV show
Right.
Dragnet.
Yep.
However, it's not anything like the show. The show was supposed to be serious.
Yeah.
And they did this as a comedic kind of
Christopher Plummer.
adaptation.
Christopher Plummer plays a preacher, like an evangelist preacher, and Dabney Coleman plays a pornography magnate who has a publisher of porn magazines.
Yeah.
And do you remember the name of his porn mag?
Playhouse.
Bait.
Bait.
B-A-I-T. And I'm
baiting.
And I'm talking about today. I'm like, wait a minute, that's fucking slang for masturbating. Oh my god, I just got it. 35 years later. So the movie still keeps giving.
Aykroyd plays Friday.
Yes.
And he's teamed up with Tom Hanks's character, who's much cooler.
His name is Pep.
Pep. He's much cooler. Friday's very by the book.
Yeah, of course.
Is this the first shot in the what would become a lot of sort of parodical, like
Chips?
sort of parody remakes of
Yes.
film of TV shows like Chips, 21 Jump Street, Stars and Hut,
it is.
Charlie's
I think
Angels.
you can safely say this is the first one.
Yeah.
This is the springboard for that entire genre.
That's an interesting genre. Beverly Hillbillies is another example.
Speaking of Jim Varney,
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Played
Munsters
Jed Clampett.
recently with
so bad. The Rob Zombie. You liked it?
I liked it. Yeah,
Oh.
The
I
Monsters?
think he did what he wanted to. He accomplished what he set out to accomplish.
Were you
High?
I was
Were you
really,
taking drugs?
really high. But my wife wanted me
I
to
only
watch it
asked
with
this
her.
because the only other people I've ever heard say they liked that movie were tripping acid while they watched.
No, I was not, but I was. It's safe to say
Yeah.
that I was really, really high when I watched it. Yes.
I thought that the main character, Herman Munster, he did an all right job. Other than that, garbage.
I thought it was
Pure
I thought it was a loving, visually interesting tribute, and I
It looked
considered
like they
putting
shot
it
in
on this
Rob
list
Zombie's
today.
backyard.
Yeah, I think it looked very homemade and
Bro, that was the point, man.
But didn't
Was
the,
it?
But the
Was it,
series
though?
kind of looked that way too, right? To defend it a little bit, but
I don't know, man. Something about it just feels really bizarre.
Munsters predate Addams Family by like a month.
Yeah. The monthers.
The monthers.
For the record, I
My
liked it.
favorite kind of cheese.
All right, so we're all guilty. We've laid our souls bare of all of our guilty pleasures.
What are we at time wise?
we got about 2 minutes. We've got.
I
time.
plead
Marathon
innocent.
check-ins.
Yeah, go ahead and give me some rapid fire
All right,
movie
so
marathon
these are
check-ins.
I haven't checked these in. I've just written them down on a post-it note. Fool's Paradise with Charlie Day. He plays a guy who goes insane, and then he looks so much like this famous actor that they just sub him in as the famous actor. He only has one line in the movie. Inside with Willem Dafoe about a burglar who gets trapped inside of a high-end apartment. The Black Demon is about a megalodon. They're supposed to not exist anymore, but in this movie they do. There's 3 movies about sharks coming out this year. The Black Demon, Big Ass Shark, or Big Shark, and then The Meg 2.
Yeah, it's a cycle with Hollywood.
Blackberry. I watched Blackberry with Glenn Howerton.
Yeah.
interesting that
Always
two,
Sunny,
yeah. Which that movie got good reviews, and I think Fool's Paradise kind of got terrible reviews. What did you think?
I think that Fool's Paradise is probably misunderstood. It's like either you like Charlie Chaplin or you don't.
Gotcha.
You know, Blackberry was decent. It's kind of like The Social Network, but a little bit funnier. and the other guy is Jay Baruchel.
I've got a hidden gem for you to check out.
I'm not done yet.
Oh my God. Jesus, go.
Malevolent. So I watched this on Thursday. My
I love that movie.
My
I'm
wife
sorry.
picked up a bartending shift, and I was home alone. I was like, I'm going to watch a scary movie. And I was trying to find the movie Malignant. But instead I watched a movie called Malevolent. And turns out it stars pretty early performance by Florence Pugh. And it's kind of like a Conjuring situation there, paranormal, ghost hunters, and it was not terrible.
I made the same mistake you did when I said I loved it, because I was also thinking of Malignant.
Yeah.
When you said Malevolent.
And then finally, last night I watched Somewhere in Queens, which was directed by Ray Romano, starring Ray Romano. And it's a...
Never thought of him as an auteur.
He's really throwing it all on the line with this one. And he... I think it's good. It's like a wholesome family comedy. Not that wholesome, though. Like there's... But you feel it. You feel it in your, like, heart space. You know?
All right.
What do you got, Sean?
Here's your hidden gem. You need to watch Polite Society.
Polite Society. I feel like I've seen this.
It is a...
From the 80s?
No, it's a 2023 release.
Oh, okay.
It's,
I'm just thinking
it's
of
a,
Society.
It's a British / Bollywood / martial arts comedy movie.
Somebody's in it.
It's
somebody
nobody
famous.
you know. Nobody you know.
I think somebody famous.
It's like it's as if Bollywood meets Crazy Rich Asians. It's a lot of fun. I
Is
recommend it.
Michelle Yeoh in it?
Nope. I also watched The Last Sentinel, the lo-fi, low-key sci-fi about a station out in the middle of the ocean that basically splits the divide between two
What are you
warring
doing,
factions. And that one's starring what's the chick
Kevin
in that
Costner.
one? Nope. It stars the girl that I'm not really fond of, Kate Bosworth.
Bosworth.
And it's
Not to be confused with Kate Beckinsale.
it's a neat premise, but it does not deliver on its promise. Anybody else got anything that we must watch?
What have you seen recently, guys?
Oh, all the movies that I just talked about today.
Well, yeah, I've
mean,
obviously got to
yeah.
see a movie about little people.
One that I really enjoyed that I saw at the theaters by a Finnish director called, his name is Helander. He directed a movie years ago called Rare Exports. That
Yeah,
Joey
Rare
Port-
Exports.
Oh, yeah.
an amazing
Fuck yeah.
movie. This movie is called
Christmas
Sisu.
movie.
It's
Yeah.
my favorite Christmas movie.
Yep.
Next to Santa Crocker.
This movie is called Sisu, which
Sisu's
is
so good.
It's a great
Yeah.
movie.
The concept means one who is desperate and solitary.
Right. So there's this, So there's this guy, kind of. I guess he's searching for gold out in the wilderness somewhere. Comes across some Nazis and mayhem ensues. Sort of similar premise to Inglourious Bastards,
It's
maybe.
John Wick in World War II.
There you go. Yeah. Combined, I guess, with Inglourious Bastards,
But
sort of,
the
because you
dog
see Nazis
lives.
get their comeuppance.
Spoiler: the dog.
Speaking of
lives.
Wick 4, Wick 4 was a lot to watch.
it was too much.
Dude, I'm sorry, but those sequences that are 20 minutes long of them fighting, they are
choreographed-
tiresome.
Choreographed hyper-violence.
I think that would have benefited from a lot of editing because it's.
Oh, you don't think it should have been 3 hours long?
No, I was going for 12. But it's a good franchise, and I've always enjoyed it.
I like
it's
it, but yeah.
slick. It's
They're
fun.
going to do a spin-off with Ana de Armas called Ballerina.
I see that. Oh, there's a TV series coming up called The Continental, based on the origin of the whole hotel thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
I like that series a lot too, but I agree with you that it just needed
edit.
to be edited down.
Edit.
I do like Donnie Yen, though.
But I really do want to know where I can get that titanium spine so I too can fall off buildings and crack my back.
No, it
and-
was
I know.
Kevlar. They had Kevlar suits.
That was a little silly too, where he just had to hold his arm up so that he wouldn't get shot and killed. I mean,
And dogs are also made of titanium as well.
Right,
They don't die either.
yeah.
So there you go. Joey, you're being quiet. Other than the movies.
He's like, I'm done with this shit.
All right.
I have not seen the John Wick movie, so I don't have anything to add.
You haven't
All
seen
right.
any of them?
No, I have not.
Wow.
All right. So we're wrapping up then.
Wrap it up.
Guys, I want to thank you for showing up.
Thank you for having
coming out.
me.
It's been a fun episode. We've got an episode on the horizon. It's the one and done episode. Movies that you only need to see one time. You don't.
No,
like
it's
that.
movies that need a sequel, but they didn't make them.
No, these are movies that you only have to see once and you're finished. I'm talking
Because they're so good.
well. It's kind of hard to swallow.
Oh, I have one already.
I'm
for
talking Requiem for a Dream.
Oh,
this.
yeah.
American History X.
American History X. I'm talking
Sixth Sense.
Yeah. Sixth Sense loses the wind in its sails.
The
after-
Crying Game.
Yeah,
I like the other one,
Spoiler,
the other
it's a
topic
dude.
you were mentioning.
this coming.
No, there's another topic you mentioned just the other
Fan
day.
theories.
Fan theories.
Yeah, fan theories is on the horizon. We're giving everyone time to do their research.
Yeah, I want that one.
But yeah, one and done's coming up, and Joey, I think you and I are probably doing that one. We'll see. We've got to work out some scheduling. But anyway, thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks for guesting. This is, by the way, the first time that Todd and Travis have been on the show together.
Right?
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Even
I
though we
know.
tried to engineer it for many years,
Yeah,
it
and-
never happened. But now it's here, so we
It was
broke
fun.
the seal. We popped the cherry. Joey, you got anything to plug?
Not this week. But coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah?
You keep saying that. All right.
I was like trying to fall asleep, and I wrote a short story in my head about this guy who's like a factory manager, and he hates unions, and his best friend, his right-hand man, is like actually the leader of the union movement, but he doesn't know it. And he's like, Joe would never do something like that. And it eventually ends in murder.
Isn't that called On the Waterfront?
Fuck.
Yeah.
Damn it.
All the good stories have been told.
I can see that coming. Sorry. All right, Todd, what you got? Any plugs?
No plugs. Yeah, I actually wanted to shout out Sisu, so I got a chance to do that.
Awesome. Travis?
I want to plug trivia Wednesday nights at Seminar Brewing. It's a good time as long as my boss doesn't show up. And also the show Detroiters, the 2018 show Detroiters with Tim Robinson from I Think You Should Leave. It's only got 2 seasons, but it's a gem.
My only plug is a show that I just started watching on HBO. It just came out. The first episode is out. It stars Lily Rose Depp and The Weeknd.
The Idol?
It's called The Idol. Have you watched it?
No, but I've heard some very mixed reviews.
I kind of liked it. I liked the wild, fly by the seat of their pants approach to shooting the show. It's a very loose script, and they let the performers kind of improv their way through it, so that's kind of cool. Plus, if you like Lily Rose Depp, you get to see a lot of her.
She get naked?
A lot of her in the first episode. All right, that's going to wrap us up today. Thank you for joining us. Please follow us on all the social medias. We're Cinema Chop Shop, except for YouTube, in which we are Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. And rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends about us, indoctrinate them, and make them love us. And until next time, we want to remind you to please
Watch, shop,
and
retrofit.